Hi guys, this is Shivanity. Welcome to the tutorial on Flyway. In this session, I am going to explain Flyway configuration parameters, how you can customize as per your needs. So this is the extracted folder of the Flyway software folder. Now in this, go to the config and open any editor. Now, initially, when I explained about how you can use Flyway for your database migration, I talk about only few configuration you need to change. Those are the minimum configuration changes required to work with the basic database migration for the Flyway. Now, what the parameters we have used is flyway.url and the user and the password. Whenever you give this you provided these three configuration parameter, then based on this URL, automatically Derby is going to identify what is the suitable driver for this, and it automatically loads it. Now in this session, I am going to explain more configuration parameter you can customize so that you can change the default behavior or the default behaviors of the Flyway which comes as part of the installation. So let us go ahead by one. So we already know that how we can how we can use flyway.url and the flyway.user and flyway.password. Now I am going to explain few more configuration so that you can change the default behavior of the Flyway. The first one is flyway.driver. So whenever you are working with any type of any relational database, first you need to make sure that you need to add the corresponding JDBC driver in the driver folder, and then you need to specify the driver, what is the driver you are going to use for this particular for the particular relational database. So that is where you need to add the Flyway driver. But the basic assumption is that if you are adding the Java libraries and you are going to provide the JDBC URL as per recommended by the Flyway, then Flyway automatically detected what is the driver it needs to load, and automatically it will loads the driver for you. But if you want to provide explicitly, then you can provide Flyway.driver, where you need to provide the JDBC driver class fully qualified class name here, and then username. In order to connect it to the database, you need to provide the username, and similarly for the password and data. And also Flyway comes with the concept of supporting multiple schemas. What it means is, so whenever we are working with the Flyway, we are going to provide username and password where it is going to consider as a migration schema, or the for that schema it is going to consider as a migration. That means whenever you put some SQL statements or the scripts, it will execute those scripts against the particular schema. But you can go ahead and provide multiple schemas which are available for that particular database URL. Then it is going to support. What I mean is, for example, here what I'm going to do is, Flyway is my actual database actual schema, and I have created one more schema called as a this dummy. So this is the another schema I have created. Now if I go to the Eclipse and see the database schema details, you can see that Flyway is going to have these details. First, what I'm going to do is I am going to clean these two schemas. Now, how we can do this clean? Now, I go to the root folder of the Flyway and open the command prompt. Here, I can say that Flyway clean. This time, what it is going to do is it is going to clean the two schemas. First, it has cleaned the Flyway, and it has also cleaned the dummy. This is the schema it has cleaned. Now if I go to the database again, if I refresh these schemas, then I do not find any tables here. At the same time, dummy also it has cleaned two schemas. Now here the point is that whenever you are working with the Flyway, the first schema whatever you are going to provide, that is the schema where it is going to create the metadata table. That means schema underscore version table is going to be created in the first schema, and second schema whenever you want to clean the objects, then only the second schema is going to be considered. But whatever the migrations you are applying on the particular database, it is always be considered as a first schema. Now what I am going to do is I am going to give a command flyway migrate. Now what happens is it is going to scan through the all the SQL statement which is available in the SQL folder, and it is going to create the schema underscore version table on the Flyway. If you see here, even though we are providing the two schemas, it has created the schema underscore version table on the first schema whatever we are providing here. Now if I go to the database and again I am going to refresh the database, now you can see that Flyway has a table, Flyway schema has the table schema underscore version. But if you see here, the dummy, this is the schema, it does not have any tables. Okay, so whenever you want to work with the multiple schemas, you can provide the multiple schemas, but only the consideration is that the first schema whatever you are going to provide here, that will be considered as a primary schema where your database migration will happen, and that schema will have the schema underscore version table. So this is how you are going to use the flyway dot schemas. And the second one is the flyway dot table. Now if you see here, by default whenever you do migrate, automatically it is creating a schema underscore version as a default table. But if you want some other table name, then you can override this parameter. You need to override this configuration, that is flyway dot table. Now if I change this one to schema underscore schema underscore table. I'm just saying that schema underscore table. Now if I go and issue again the command, first I'm going to clean this database or the schema, and then I'm going to apply flyway migrate. Now this time whatever the table it is going to create it as per your configuration whatever you made in this file, that is schema underscore table. Now once again I go to the database, refresh the schemas and see the schema for flyway, and you can see that schema underscore table. This is what the, if you want to provide your custom table name, then this is the configuration you need to change. And similarly, if you want to provide a different locations, so default what it is happening is it is identifying the SQL folder as a default location, and whatever the scripts you are placing here, those will be considered as the migration script. But if you want to provide some other folder, then you can provide you can override this config parameter as the locations. Now once this location is going to provide, then based on this location it will try to identify the scripts and it is going to execute it. Okay, so now let us put few files here, then we can go further. First what I am going to do is I am going to create a one script, create table emp id int emp name varchar care of 100. This is the scheme, this is the simple create table state simple SQL script I'm creating, and the naming convention is going to be the version v1 underscore create underscore table create emp table dot SQL file, and I'm going to select this one as all. and I'm going to save this file. Okay, I can delete this document text. Okay, now once again what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the migrate command. Now what happens is it will take this script and it is going to execute against the, it is going to migrate to the whatever the database we have specified, that is the Flyway. Now what I'm saying is, for example, now instead of SQL I want to put some other folder. I'm going to create a folder that is Flyway. To Flyway. So I have, it's already there. Sorry. F2 scripts. I'm putting this one as a script. Under this, I'm going to place this file. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this path. Where I need to look for is the path. I'm going to changing here the location. Okay, so it is a forward slash. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean the should be either a file system or the class path. Okay, now what I can say is here file system colon, then we are giving this path. Okay, it has now cleaned the schema, and then we are going to use the migrate. Now this time what happens is it is going to pick the file from the scripts folder whatever we have placed here, and then it is going to execute the, it is going to migrate this script to the corresponding schema. Now this is the advantage of using the Flyway dot location. So if you are having if you want to provide your database scripts in a different location other than SQL folder, then using this Flyway dot locations configuration, you can pointing to the any directory, and you need to give the fully qualified path or the relative path for this particular file system. Then automatically those scripts will be taken care by Flyway is going to consider those scripts and it will do the database migration. And then we are going to hold this Flyway dot resolver for the bait, because this will be used during the Java based migrations. So that I am going to explain in the later tutorials. But for now, the another important configuration parameter is this is the Flyway.sql migration prefix. By default, it is going to consider v as a prefix. That is the reason if you see here, always we are going to provide the v as a prefix for the SQL scripts. Now, if you want to change that behavior, then you can override this override, or you can provide the SQL migration prefix. Here instead of v, I am going to say it is version. Now I change this one to the version. Now if I am trying to again run the command migrate, it is going to give us the error message. If you see here, warning, schema Flyway as a version 1, but no migration could be resolved in the configuration locations. So that is the reason, because we have created a, this is basically validation got failed. Now that is the reason what we are going to do is we are going to clean the schema once again, and then we can apply the migrate command. Then you can see that it is not at all recognizing whatever the file name we are provided. It does not consider this as a valid file name, because we specified that the prefix for the SQL migration script should be the version. but the file name is with the v1 underscore create table, create underscore emp underscore table, hence it didn't recognized. So now if I change this one to the version 1, and then if I execute the same command again, then this time it is going to identify that as a script, SQL script, and it will migrated that script. Now if you want to see the info table info, we can see Flyway info. It will have the entry in schema underscore table. Okay, so this is completed successfully. And similarly, so if you want to provide any prefix for your SQL scripts, then you can override this configuration. Then as per your configuration, as per your value, whatever you are providing for the SQL migration, that will be considered. And similarly, you can see that Flyway repeatable SQL migration prefix. So migrations here basically two types. So Flyway consider migrations in a two classified into two different ways. One is version based, another one is the repeatable migrations. What is meant by version based means, what whenever you are providing a SQL scripts, always it is going to consider that the latest version file needs to be placed, so that it will always consider that as a latest migration, and it is going to migrate that a particular script to the database. So whenever you are providing a scripts, you always maintains the version, either it might be a version 1 or version 1.1 or version 2, version 3, version 4 and so on, or version 1.1, version 1.2, version 1.3, something like that. You have always increment the version, that we consider as a version based. So version based, what it means is, it always makes sure that it will execute only once during the life cycle. That means from the database scratch to when it comes to the multiple stages, whenever you provide the version means the always version is going to be executed only once. But if it is a repeatable versions, repeatable SQL commands means something like a, whenever you are creating in a view, that means create or replace view, create, replace or procedure, or create or replace function. Those type of things, if you want to execute every time when you are manually when you are migrating the database migration using the Flyway, then those repeatable scripts are going to be executed every time if there is any change in the script or the checksums. I'm going to show you that one. So now let us consider this is the version, and what I mean to by repeated means, I'm going to create this one. In order to create a repeatable scripts, you need to create a script file with the r underscore underscore, and then you can provide the script insert emp table, and this is a table. I'm going to open this table here. Instead of create, insert into emp values 101. This is the SQL script I am placing in this. Now let us try to run and see what happens here. Now again I am going to issue the command Flyway migrate. Now this time what happens is, it successfully applied one migration to the schema Flyway. Now I go to the database and see the table content. I can see the table content. It will insert one record here. Now again, if I issue the same command, this time there is no change in the script. That is the reason Flyway is saying that there is no migration is required. But now what I can do is, I can go to the script. I am changing this one to some other content, that is value as serity I am giving, and then if I issue the Flyway migrate command, then this time it will identify there is a change, and it is applied. So repeatable means if there is any check, basically Flyway is going to calculate the checksum for each SQL migration, and if there is any checksum change happens, then automatically it will consider this as a repeatable, and then this is going to that means Flyway automatically migrate this script. These type of scripts we call as a repeatable. Now the example for this one is you can create or replace view, create or replace procedure, create or replace function. So those type of statements comes under the repeatable um, migrations. Okay, now if I go to this configuration once again, you will see that Flyway dot repeatable SQL migration prefix, by default it is going to be R. Now if you want to change this one to the some other value, then you can change here. Now go to the prefix. I am saying that repeat. Okay. Now once again I am going to issue this command. This time it is validation is going to be failed. What it's saying is successfully validated 3, no migration is required. Now repeatable prefix file. Why didn't failed? One second, let me go to the, no, I didn't change here. So I need to change that file. Then it will be considered. Okay. Now let me drop this, let me clean the schema once again. I'm going to clean it. And then what I'm going to do is here instead of R, I am going to rename it to repeat. Now again I am going to apply the migrate command. Now this time it has successfully identifies this schema, and then it created the table, and also it created the insert statement. Now if I go to the database and again refresh it, you can see that the content is going to be okay. So this is the value, and now what I'm going to do is I am going to change this value to okay, and then saving it. This time again it is going to change in the checksums, hence the first one is a create statement. So that is a first script is the version 1. That is the reason it will always execute only once. But repeatable migrations, always when there is a change in the checksum or the content of the particular file, automatically the script will be executed. Now when I again issue the Flyway migrate command, then it has validated successfully. One second, let me see whether I save this file. Yeah, now I can go ahead and refresh the schema, and I see the sample content. Not it didn't change. Let me see why it didn't change. Okay, this is the problem. Let me change this REPAT, and whatever I have provided here. Sorry, I changed in a wrong file, this one actually. Whatever the file I want to change is this one. Okay, so not one I am changing this time. And when I show this command, this time this is going to be considered this as a change in this script, and it has done. So migrations are classified in two types. One is version based and repeatable based. The version means always execute only once. Repeatable means if there is any change in the content of the checksum for that particular script, then it will be executed. Now if you want to change the file name convention for that repeatable migrations, this is the configuration you need to use. And then similarly, whenever you do the migrations, we have defaultly it is going to be separated underscore underscore. That means for the prefix underscore underscore we are providing. For example, if you say here version 1 underscore underscore we are providing, that is the delimiter or the separator we are using default flyway using. If you want to change that default separator, then you can override this configuration, that is flyway SQL migration separator. Here what we are going to do is, instead of underscore underscore we can provide only single underscore. Okay, now I am going only one underscore. With this, what you can do is, instead of two underscores, I'm going to change this file name to v1 underscore. This will be considered as a this is considered as a now separator between the version and the actual description of the file name. Now when I go ahead and clean the database, and then I'm going to use the migrate command. Then if you see here, this time it is successfully recognized this as a valid file name. But if you don't override this functionality, then this is going to be invalid file name. It will Flyway is going to consider as a invalid file name. Okay, so if you want to override that parameter, you need to change this value. And then similarly for the suffix also. So most of the SQL migrations, what happens is always it is going to be ended or the suffix is going to be .sql. But if you want to change to some other extension, then you can override this particular extension, or you can override this parameter particularly. For example, instead of SQL, if I put dot txt, I'm just checking whether this will work or not. Okay, now what we are going to do here is, instead of SQL, again we need to change this file to txt. Yes, this is also we are going to change this file name to the txt. Now let us see whether this is going to consider this txt as a valid file name or not. Okay, so in order to apply this migration, what we are going to do is we just clean this schema and then migrate. Now let us see whether this is going to be considered as a valid file. See here, so this is considered as a valid file name. So if you want to provide any extension other than SQL, that will comes as part of the default SQL configuration. But if you want to change that suffix to some other extension, then you can override this configuration parameter. And all the SQL migrations are default with the Flyway dot encoding is going to be UTF -8. But if you want to change it to some other format, and you can override this particular configuration parameter. And similarly, whether placeholder should be replaced or not. So basically the Flyway come up with the concept of where you can provide the placeholders in the SQL scripts, and then you can provide those parameters here. Then automatically whenever it is trying to run this run the scripts, whatever the placeholders you place here, those will be replaced with the placeholders which you are placing in the SQL scripts. What it means is, I am going to explain with this example. Now let us consider I am going to create this one with the employee table. Instead of employee table, default placeholder is going to be dollar open parenthesis and open curly braces and close curly braces. Whatever the name you are going to give, that will be considered as a EMP table. Okay. Now what is meant by the placing the placeholder, replacing the placeholder means, here now I go to the script Okay, and then here I need to change this value placeholder. What is that? emp table. Now this is the placeholder we put it in the SQL script. Now with what value you need to change? For example, I am saying that emp. Now whenever you are executing this particular script, what happens is Flyway identifies whatever the placeholders which is present in the SQL scripts, and then that will be replaced with this value. Now again we are going to run the same script. First we will going to clean this database or the schema, and then again I am going to apply migrate. Now it has successfully replaced. Now by default Flyway will allow to replace the placeholders. So if you don't want to replace this don't want to replace these placeholders, then you can consider as a false. Then this time what happens is that you disable this functionality, it will not allow you to use placeholders in your SQL scripts. Now when I again migrate it, this time it will show you the error saying like this placeholder cannot be replaced, because by default you are turning off this feature. Okay, so by default this feature is true. So if you want to disable this functionality, you can use it. Then this parameter whatever you are going to placed here, it will not work. Okay, and similarly the placeholder prefix and suffix, by default this prefix is going to be dollar symbol and open parenthesis curly braces, and the suffix is going to be closed or closed curly braces. If you want to change this one to something else, then you can change this default change this configuration. Now instead of open curly braces, what I am going to do is dollar, and then I put bracket, open bracket, and then similarly closed one, what I am trying to put here is I'm going to put this one bracket. Now here I am going to comment this one, because by default it has to be true, so then only this will be applied. Now if I go to the script, instead of this this curly braces, what I'm going to put this one, because we are overriding the default setting. And then again you can go ahead and migrate. This time create table, because hash, okay, sorry, it should be dollar, because I say that this is the prefix, the prefix is going to be dollar bracket. Okay, now when I execute it, okay, this has completed successfully. So if you want to replace the placeholder based on your custom need, then these three properties will help you to customize replacing the placeholders. The first one is going to be this, by default it should be enabled. That means by default it is going to be true. Then you can provide how many parameters how many placeholders you will place in the script. All the parameters entries needs to be configured here. Then if you change this default placeholder prefix and suffix, then as per your needs, then you need to provide the similar placeholder prefix and suffix in the scripts. If you don't override this functionality, then dollar curly open curly braces and close curly braces are going to, between that whatever the parameter is going to define, that will be considered as a placeholder, and automatically it will replace with this parameter whatever the values you are going to provide here. Okay, and then the next one is Flyway Dot Target. Now whenever we are migrating the versions, till which version the migration should happen, by default what happens is it is always going to be the latest version. What I mean to say is, for example, in this scripts I have version 1 to version 20. Then the target is always going to be specified that from 1 to what is the maximum version we want to migrate. But by default, what it is, by default, Flyway is going to be considered latest version. That means from 1 to 20, everything it is going to execute. But if you want to provide, if you want to override that functionality, you can provide Flyway target. For example, if you say target is 3, then out of 20 scripts, it will only execute the first 3 versions. Okay, so that is the advantage of this one. And the next one is Flyway dot validate and migrate. So whenever we execute the migrate command, first it is going to validate and then it is going to migrate the actual script. By default, it is going to be true, but if you want to disable this functionality, you can disable, but it is always recommended that you need to validate before actually migrating it. Okay, so if we don't want to validate while during the migration, then you can say this is a false. Now when I execute this time, it will directly migrate. It won't validate anything, and then directly it is going to see here schema Flyway is up to date, no migration necessary. But previously, if you see successfully validated 2 migrations, that means by default it is first before it migrate the scripts, first it will validate. Validate is a good command because it is going to validate whatever the scripts available in your local folder where you are have the SQL scripts which is going to compare with the whatever the change it is already applied in the schema underscore version of the schema underscore table, and then compare if there is any mismatch, then it will not allow you to proceed further. So it is always recommended that you go with the default setting for this particular config parameter. Okay, and then the next one is clean on validator error. So if there is any error happens, then first of all it is going to clean. What it is going to do is first it is going to clean all the objects from that particular schema. So that is the reason whenever we are using the clean, it is always a dangerous, very dangerous command because it is going to clean complete schema or complete objects which are available in the schema. That is the reason always make sure that don't touch these type of parameters during the production, or it is even recommended that don't turn on this feature even in your development process also. Otherwise, you are going to end up with a it is going to be ended with the complete database you are going to lose, and then it is not possible to recover once again. That is the reason whenever you are using the clean command, make sure that you don't use that clean at all in your particular production or the staging or the test environment. For your local development purpose, you can use, or even for the testing, or you want to test with the Flyway for some feature, you can go ahead and clean it. But it is always not, it is recommended that don't touch these clean commands during the production environment. And also we have the Flyway.clean disabled. This is also one of the dangerous command because production environment clean is going to be very dangerous. So that is the reason don't touch this property. And next one is the version to baseline version. Whenever we are baseline version is basically used, you already have a few set of configuration or the already scripts are available, few database changes already applied in the database. From that version onwards, you want Flyway to maintain the database migration, then you are going to use the baseline version. By default, if you have whenever you use the baseline version, by default it is going to insert the value of 1. Now I am going to show you this one. Now instead of migrate, you can say that Flyway baseline, then unable to metadata because it is already contains the migration. So that is the reason what you are going to do is Flyway clean, and then you can use the baseline. When you use the baseline, by default the value is going to be 1, and also there is another property which is the Flyway baseline description. So whenever it adds an entry in the particular table, now let us go to the schema underscore table and see the sample content. This is what I am referring. Version is going to be 1 and description is going to be Flyway baseline, and then type whatever the script it is. There is no script actually, but Flyway automatically create some script using that, and then it has a few other information. Now if we want to change this default behavior, then go ahead and change this value. For example, default baseline version I am going to change to 5, and then a description I am going to change it to Flyway I can say that, let us go. Okay, and now I am saying this time again what I am going to do is, as I already created the baseline, let us clean it, and this time we can execute the baseline command once again. Then you can see the whatever the changes we have configured, those things will be reflected. If you see here, version is 5 and its description is about the baseline. So this is the configuration you need to change if you want to change the baseline version and the baseline description. And similarly, baseline on migration is true. Let us keep as it is. Default is going to be false, because if there is some scripts it is already available using the Flyway, then it will not allow you to do again the baseline. What I mean to say is, previously we already have some migrations we already applied. Now with that we are trying to create, or now we are trying to do the baseline. That is the reason it is going to give the error. That is the reason let us keep by default as a false, and if you want to make it as a true, then if it is already database migration scripts are available, that it will not allow you to baseline this particular database. And then these are the callbacks. It is anyhow it is comes with the advanced features. And the final command as of now I am going to explain is the Flyway dot installed by configuration. What it means is, whenever you execute the Flyway is trying to insert the script, here you can see that installed underscore by, this is the parameter which is trying to insert, or this is the parameter we are referring. Now by default, whatever the schema name or the username, whatever you are providing here, that will be taken care. But instead of that, if you want to provide something, then you can change that one. Here I'm saying this customer. Now this time we clean it, and then I'm going to migrate. This time what it is going to do is, instead of Flyway, it is going to insert by column with the customer. Let us go ahead and refresh the sample, and then you can see here it is updated the customer. Now usually this is important for when your multiple developers are trying to push their changes. If they given their user ID, then it is easy to track the database migration script who actually doing the who are actually modifying, or who actually last modified that particular script. Hope you are clear with the configurations, how you can override the existing default configuration which comes as part of the Flyway, and you can customize as per your needs. And in the next session I'm going to explain how we can work with Java based migrations, and then we will see further concepts. Thanks for watching. Please do subscribe to my YouTube channel to get more technical videos, and please comment on my YouTube video if you have any questions.